It's taking. Well. Hey, Frank, change your background, buddy. Change your background. Okay, I'll try. Let's see. Can I do it? Can I change the background? No, not like that. I can't. Oh, forget it. What's the difference anyway? Somehow Aaron ended up out of the group. I don't understand.
I don't know how that happened.
You out. I didn't take you out.
Nope.
Anyway. Well, I guess here we are. Let's see. What kind of leafy news do we have? Let me see. Do we have any leafy news? Well, we have the fact that Easton Cowan is playing for the London Knights. Unfortunately, they lost last night, so they're going to have to play in the semifinal to decide who will play for the Memorial Cup. But I'm sure you have a little more news about the young, talented forward.
Well, statistically speaking, Easton Cowan has been at the center of it all. Through 2 games in the tournament, he actually led the tournament in scoring with 4 points. That's 1 goal and 3 assists, and is tied for the lead in assists with 3. He was a driving force in London's tournament opening 3-2 overtime win over the Wellington Wildcats on Saturday. Picked up 2 primary assists in the game, including a highlight reel setup on the winner. He shuffled a backhand pass to Sam O'Reilly, who made no mistake. Cowan followed it up with another performance on Sunday in a 3-1 win over the Rimouski Oceanic. He got a goal and an assist there. Unfortunately, after that, hasn't been all sunshine and lollipops for the London Knights. So, they are where they are, and they are playing for what they're playing for. But yeah, Medicine Hat, unfortunately, were the team that managed to take them out. The Tigers actually last won the tournament in 1988 with Trevor Linden. When they beat the Windsor Spitfires that time. So, it's unfortunate for Easton. I know that he wanted to do better, and I think they had the chance to finish the job, but unfortunately, this is where they are.
Yes, and it is what it is. All right, let's talk about, you have yourself a couple of interesting acquisitions prior to considering Sam Bennett.
Well, there's of course the speculation that the Maple Leafs need to get more physical. They're obviously not hitting enough and doing enough facey punchy. The player that is, of course, being talked about the most is noted Leaf killer Sam Bennett. Now, the Maple Leafs' recent history has had 2 clear examples of robust physical types who never lived up to expectations after the Buds acquired them, which is why you should sort of take the whole idea of taking Sam Bennett with a grain of salt. The Leafs, for example, tried to or acquired Dave Bolland from the Chicago Blackhawks during the 2013 draft. He had a 19-goal and 37-point season with the Chicago in 2011-12 before recording 14 points in 35 games in the lockout-shortened 12-13 campaign. They also signed David Clarkson to a 7-year, $36.75 million contract.
What a contract,
dude! Oh,
that hung around their neck. They had to trade a draft pick to get rid of him.
Yeah, but Boland just played 23 games as a Maple Leaf. Got 8 goals and 12 points before he left for the Panthers in 2014-15, and unfortunately, after that, only played another 78 NHL games. Meanwhile, David Clarkson. All the hoopla and foofara around him with the whole "he's coming, Terminator" sort of thing.
I think.
Yeah, he only played 118 regular season games as a Leaf. He only got 15 goals and 11 assists before they traded him to the Columbus Blue Jackets on a full-on salary dump in February 2015. Unfortunately, after that, Clarkson only played 26 more NHL games before he hung him up. And the start to his season, especially with the whole idea of bringing in more sandpaper, didn't start well. He got suspended 10 games at the start of the season for coming off the bench, and that's not anything you ever want to have happen. That was a no-no. He should have known better. But I mean, the real difference between Clarkson and Boland is the fact that Bennett has played 691 career games. Clarkson only played 570 and Boland only played 433. But he's also way ahead of Clarkson and Boland when it comes to career games played in the playoffs. So
when we talk about Edmonton, I'll pipe in there in regards
sure.
to that kind of stuff. But let's continue. Let's carry on with Dalton Varsho of the Toronto Blue Jays, who's having himself. He's only had like 58 at bats or something, or played whatever it is, and he's got a whole whack of home runs.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a road for Dalton Varsho. Unfortunately, I've got the wrong link in there, but that's okay. But he has suffered injury issues at the start of the season. However, he does appear to be back on track. Now he's short; he's only 5'8". And he's actually been managing to come through for the Blue Jays. They were in desperate need of offense on Monday. They needed something to sort of back up Kevin Gossman, give him some sort of run support. He was the man in that it was pretty much a solo effort offensively from Varsho, who belted his team-leading 8th home run off Jacob deGrom in the first inning, and then added a double in the next at-bat in the third, setting up the Jays' second and final run of the game on a sac fly from Alejandro Kirk. Varsho's quickly become a fan favorite in Toronto. He's got a very athletic style of play. He's made some absolutely gorgeous highlight reel catches. But yeah, the fact that he got home run number 8 of the season was secondary to the fact that it gave the Jays a much needed lead. And they played from behind far too often. So it's one of those things.
But on Tuesday they lost 2-0, and that's just more of the same. Let's talk about the Habs, and you're seeing early commentary that suggests the Bruins and the Habs might have an interest in making a big trade, interdivision trade, longtime rivals. Seems like a interesting proposition to me.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing that's clear from the Montreal Canadiens this postseason, it's that they're kind of in the market for a second line center. Not that Kent Hughes hasn't tried to plug that hole. They did try Alex Newhook there, and they tried Kirby Dach, and unfortunately, both of them failed to live up to expectations. Dach also suffered injury issues.
Yeah,
so
that's his big thing. He never really had to establish himself.
The interesting part of it is that the Boston Bruins may be testing the water to see how much Pavel Zacha could fetch in a trade. And he might be the individual that the Habs are going to need. If you look at what the Bruins had going into the offseason, and you look at what the Habs had, there is a possibility that they could be able to swing a deal here, particularly for a second line center. The way it sits with the Habs right now, they're looking at Christian Dvorak as their second line center, and I don't know if that helps at all. But getting Pavel Zacha in there could definitely do something to shake it up.
They've had some luck with Czech, and anyway, it doesn't matter. But go ahead.
The question is, what is Boston going to ask for in return? It could be any bunch of things, really. Judging by Sweeney's moves at the trade deadline, significant changes look like they're going to be coming for Boston. With the players that they offloaded, most notably Marchand going to Florida. This is what looks to be a full teardown and a rebuild. So,
well, I don't know. They might turn around and bring Marchand back. I don't know if they have any interest in doing it, but that's another story. Let's talk about the NHL draft and the Ottawa Senators, who have a real good stock of great young players. We saw them against the Leafs. We saw a really good team that, sprinkle a little experience in that lineup. In other words, that team getting some experience. They got some very important and necessary experience playing in the playoffs. And I don't know. They got another first round pick that they've done a great job drafting, Aaron. We've watched it. The biggest thing that they've needed to figure out was goaltending, and we think they've got it now. So now it's a question of up front, what can they do there? Or maybe look for a backup goaltender, because we're seeing in the National Hockey League today, you have to have 2 goaltenders. I mean, Edmonton, if they don't have 2 goaltenders, are they where they are today?
And gone are the days of a single goalie Iron Manning it all the way through the season.
That ain't gonna happen.
You know, you're not having guys that are playing 73, 74 games anymore. You're not having guys that are playing.
That's because you're not getting a lot. You're not getting a lot of games where you've got 20 shots on one side, 18 on the other. You know, we're talking 43 now. You know, and in a game, and that's in a game with great teams. You know, and the physical nature of the game. Well, we can talk about that a little further. So Ottawa, do you have any ideas who they'll be picking?
You know, I'm really not 100% sure at this point. Certainly the draft is decent, but it's not nearly as deep as it's been in recent years.
Next year is going to be a great one for free agency.
Yeah, and you know, in 22 and 23, Ottawa didn't have a first round pick, having traded those for Alex DeBrincat and Jacob Chikrin. Those worked out fine. Wink, wink. You know, in 2024, they returned to the top 10 where they got Carter Yukemchuk at 7th. This year, however, they're looking at the 21st pick. Now, this is, funnily enough, not the first time they've picked at 21. This will actually be the 4th time. Some of the notables that they actually managed to pick up were Anton Volchenkov in 2000, Stefan Nason in 2011, Colin White in 2015. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's a bit of a crapshoot, but the players are a little more reliable. But unfortunately, as it stands, like we've mentioned before, this isn't the deepest draft. Next year is supposed to be the bumper crop. I'm hoping they do actually manage to swing some trades and get something back in the kitty when it comes to draft picks for that.
Well, the Leafs have to work hard and find ways to get players that is outside of the norm. College is one thing. Players who don't go to the teams that drafted them. We've seen a high quality player, become available in that regard. I don't think he's been signed, but those kinds of considerations, the Leafs have to basically work on the plan of talking to these players who are available and say, look, we don't have draft picks. We need guys that we want to help. You know, we want frontline prospects. We're not bringing you in here and you're behind 3 picks we have that we think we're going to give a better look. So that they're going to have to convince players that the opportunity is here. The team plays well, but we need new blood. Why don't you be part of that? And that's what the Leafs have to work on. Let's talk about the Oilers power play, and they sunk the Stars 4-1.
There was one quick thing I wanted to touch on before we moved on to the Oilers story here as well. Ottawa doesn't have a first-round pick next year. And the reason why they don't have a first-round pick next year was because they were forced to forfeit it due to a penalty imposed by the NHL for a deal involving forward Evgeny Dadonov. That's basically when the Senators tried to trade him to the Golden Knights. So, you know, this is one of those situations where they kind of shot themselves in the foot last year. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing that there is it's a good thing that there's a deeper draft this time around.
Okay. Anyway, all right. So now
the Oilers.
Oilers power play. They beat the Stars 4-1.
Yeah, Leon Draisaitl and Corey Perry each had a power play goal and an assist. The Edmonton Oilers managed to put themselves out to a 3-1 lead with a 4-1 victory over the Stars yesterday. Kasperi Kapanen and Adam Henrique both added empty net goals, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Connor McDavid each had 2 assists for the Oilers, who have now battled back and won 3 consecutive games after a third period collapse cost them the opening game in Dallas. Since then, they've outscored Dallas 13-2. Now, it wasn't an easy game, according to Draisaitl. There are going to be some swings in a series. That's one of the last 4 teams standing. Obviously, it's going to be more difficult. But it's important to note the Oilers are now 9-0 in Game 4s over their past 3 playoff runs.
They've got a good record. They I got to tell you, I'm watching the games and I'm very impressed. Firstly, and most importantly, I am really pleased to see the way they're physical. Now, they lost a guy due to physicality and Hyman. That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt the Oilers a lot without him. He's been a guy who is tucked right underneath, second best scorer on the Edmonton Oilers over the playoffs. I mean, that's a pretty good place to sit. In fact, he was the best last year for a time. So, this is a guy they're going to miss, a key goal here or there that they need. He's a guy who usually produced it. He took an interesting hit from Marchment, which I don't know. Did he miss him on purpose, or was it accidentally on purpose? He went after his arms.
You know what? Honestly, Marchie has a history of taking bad penalties, and not necessarily always bad, but also dumb penalties. It could be that he was trying to do something untoward to Zachary, but missed. I don't think there really was any ill intent.
Zach wasn't looking.
No.
It was a blindside hit. A legal blind. Well, I guess legal.
It wasn't called, so I guess technically it's legal. And of course, that because it's an American team on a Canadian team, Department of Player Safety is going to look the other way.
Well, I have to say that's one thing I'm going to say about this series. I'm seeing duality in the penalty awarding. We're seeing. I think Edmonton is getting away with stuff. So's Dallas. It's not like Florida and the Leafs and Florida and Carolina. Carolina, you've got Tkachuk chasing Aho around the ice.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That seems to me should be a 10-minute misconduct and a penalty, because that's as unsportsmanlike as it could possibly get. He's hunting the guy down. I mean, that's far away from a hockey play. But for some reason, him and other players on Florida can do things that are just ridiculous things. Throat slash, all these things we've seen through the years that the league at one time felt was very important to eliminate. They're allowed to do it with impunity. It's just ridiculous. And as much as you and I criticize the Maple Leafs or offer a suggestion for improvement, being a little more physical, like you said, you use the term punchy face. Unfortunately, Carolina is not even as tough as Toronto, as much as we're criticizing Toronto. So Florida can have their way with them. They're hitting them in ways that a lot of teams would react to the hit, where you've got the Leafs and Carolina don't have an answer for those kinds of hits. So the good news is Carolina won that hockey game. Now, the bad news is they're going home to play Florida, who it seems play better on the road than they do at home. So that's all I got to say about that series.
It certainly has been a case of home cooking versus road cooking. And, the fact that the Panthers got shut out in Game 4.
It's not anything you can hang your hat on. The Leafs shut them out, remember?
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like they won the first 3 games 5-2, 5-0, and 6-2. And then Carolina puts together a 3-0 win. That there's going to be a hiccup. There's always going to be something like that crops up. It seems interesting.
The only chance they're going to have at home is if they score on the power play. If they're given power plays, which Florida, for the way they play, the game they eliminated Toronto, they didn't get a single penalty. The Leafs got the only penalty in that game. So,
which was really interesting.
They can play the style and not get penalties. We can argue about, is that style? We're seeing interference calls in the Edmonton game, and the announcers are saying how good it is that they're giving it to both teams. Well, let's see what happens with Carolina, because that's one of the most important moves. Florida loves hitting late. They love hitting late, and they love interfering, but they don't get the penalties that they should. So I guess you could say I'm pulling for Carolina in this one, but I'm pulling for Carolina because I want them to stay alive here as long as they can and give Edmonton a chance to at least have an equal amount of games played and not be not be playing while Florida sits. Oh, by the way, I'm pulling for Edmonton in case nobody knew.
I kind of figured it was that sort of thing. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that fans of Canadian teams in general would find themselves rooting for it.
I'm waving the flag, even though people say, well, it doesn't enter into the National Hockey because the players aren't all Canadian. Well, I'm pulling for the Canadian fans. All right. So
we deserve to see hockey well into June.
Yes. I want to see a Canadian city celebrate, because if a Canadian city can celebrate winning the Stanley Cup, that'll raise the specter that it could happen in another Canadian city, not to mention places, Toronto places, not to mention.
No, and you know what? There are a lot of people that I know joke about the fact that Toronto hasn't had it in so many years that, if a person were born the last time they at least won the cup, they'd be old enough to retire, yada, yada, yada.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it would finally get Leaf fans to shut up. I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is if the Leafs finally win a cup, we'll have to shut up because we finally won one.
But I think the real interesting thing will be is how it'll shut down all the Leaf haters. There's a lot of people who just hate the Leafs because they're an easy mark. Most Leaf haters, people who hate the Leafs, are people that couldn't resist walking by a guy lying on the ground and not give him a kick. That's who Leaf haters are. They love kicking people while they're down. And that to me is a characteristic that I find abhorrent, but that's just me. So Edmonton has an injury to deal with. We've talked about that. We haven't talked about the fact that Connor McDavid isn't having the greatest of finals. He's not the center of attention. He's not the go-to guy, but a winger on his line is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Well, at least he wasn't on his line. Now he's going to be on his line due to injury. He's been outstanding. And don't forget, folks, he was a first overall pick. If everybody remembers that there were 4 years there in a row where the Edmonton Oilers, they made the rules change, the first overall pick, and it became a lottery because, if you were bad enough, you could drop down and guarantee that you get the first overall pick. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was one of those first overall picks that Edmonton drafted. And he's been amazing. A two-way player, very smart, penalty kill, power play. He does it all.
He really does, and it's unfortunate that Taylor Hall's no longer with them. He was an important part of that. The problem that you eventually ran into with these guys is there was too much talent and only one puck.
No, the Taylor Hall thing is a perfect entrance into the core four. Edmonton made a decision and realized they couldn't have three guys that are the same. So they had to get rid of one of them to bring in somebody else that brings something else to the team. And Taylor Hall had to go. They didn't need another expensive goal scoring forward. They needed something else. And they had something else in Draisaitl. But then it's the rest of the players they bring in, a guy like Bouchard on defense, who's turned into a major stud. And the trades they made this year were ones that for the defensemen that were odd. They were oddities. They didn't get a shutdown defenseman. They brought two more puck-carrying defensemen because they felt the players up front are so good, you got to get them the puck. And you know what? That sounds like a problem the Leafs could solve. You know what I mean?
There is the very real possibility, honestly, and I try to say this without sounding like I'm taking the piss, but there is the very real possibility that they could find a trade partner, just a couple provinces over.
They need a real puck carrying defenseman. Yep. There's one in Buffalo, a young kid that they may be able to pry loose, but they don't have the draft picks to do it that way, so they'll have to deal from the depth that they have, which, in all honesty, is not getting any deeper when you don't have draft picks.
No, that's very true. And they find themselves I think they find themselves a little bit on the short end of it here, but by the same token, it's not like the cupboards are bare for
no, I'm not suggesting that. They've got Easton Cowan coming, but Aaron, all their eggs are in one basket.
Yeah, that's very true.
They don't have depth. There's no lottery out there. There's not enough players that can be a lottery ticket to them getting a player who they didn't see as being really good. When you're drafting in the second, third, and sometimes not even the second, the third, fourth, and fifth round, you can hit on a good player, but the level of which he'll be good is not the same as a guy in the second round or in the first round.
I've been of the opinion for a long time that first and second round draft picks are typically interchangeable. There's not that much of a difference between player number 32 on the draft chart and player number 33.
Right.
And
well, because usually there's a handful, like 2 or 3 players that are in the top 3 that are in a way interchangeable. But most times, who the best guy is. Your first overall pick, we all know who it's going to be, basically. There's 1, 2, 3 little dance sometimes, but the Leafs. By the way, folks, this is a Leafs show. We did talk about Edmonton, but everything has to end up being about the Leafs. So Edmonton has shown us what's absent in the Leaf lineup: their ability to be physical, and to put it simply, they're getting great officiating because a team isn't going to out foul them. They're going to foul the other team, if you know what I'm saying. So when the referee puts the whistle in his pocket, there's some benefit for Edmonton. It's just not a question of the other team getting away with stuff. They're getting away with it too, because that slash over Hintz. I don't know how that, they say it's not really a suspendable thing. So you're saying you can injure a guy and take him out of the lineup, and it's not a suspendable offense.
In Darnell's defense, it was not a chop directly on top of the foot.
Sure,
Darnell went to hack his shins, and it happened to deflect off his shin pads and down off the top of his foot. That is what I saw in the replay. Other folks obviously saw something different, which is why they were calling for Darnell's head on a platter.
I always defer to the accidentally on purpose. Right.
100%. I mean, the look on Darnell's nurse faces, though, after Rupe Hintz went down, was one of those, but I didn't even hit him that hard sort of looks.
Yeah, but that's a natural. That's gaslighting by hockey players. You know that, Aaron. They do it all the time. They gaslight all the time. That's why they have a penalty called a diving penalty.
An embellishment.
There's a reason.
Hey, Matthew Tkachuk got 2 minutes for the other night.
Yeah, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. So it all happens for a reason. Okay, Aaron, I give you the last comment. So far, the playoffs, it's rounding into an Edmonton Panther,
It certainly is.
You think it'll go there? Is there an upset in the, like? Do the Stars go back home and win a game and make it interesting? Do the Canes go on the road and make it interesting?
Certainly, at the end of the day, neither team can be discounted. Let's be honest here. We've seen this. We've seen the Stars make comebacks before with a little help from their friends. More specifically, I'm thinking Brett Hull in Buffalo. They got a little bit of help there. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a very definite possibility that the Dallas Stars become repeat champions because they get a little help from their friends. However, Edmonton can put them away in the next game with a very positive and definitive, loud statement. As for Carolina versus Florida, Florida's always been a gritty team. They've always been a team that is willing to go hammer and tongs with anyone. The hope here being that Carolina will be able to rise to the challenge. They don't have the same level of physicality that Florida does, but they can hurt you in other ways. So I'm hoping that Rod the Bod's team manages to make it through.
Power play, power play, power play. That's what Carolina needs to beat Florida. But there have to be penalties for them to score on the power play. So we'll see what kind of penalties Florida draws or creates and see what they can do. As far as Edmonton's concerned, they have this whole series been shot out of a cannon, Aaron. And the first game's the game that when they got shot out of the cannon. They were ahead 3-1. They lost. They have done that in the last 3 games. They have taken a lead and ridden it home on a goaltender who, going into this series, was washed up in many people's minds. Nobody believed that he could play goal at a level that will help the Edmonton Oilers advance to the Stanley Cup final. And he's done it. He had that one period, that second period, 20 shots on goal. He didn't let a goal in. Man, you got to admire him. And, we joke, you and I joke about goaltenders and capturing lightning in a bottle. Guess what he's done?
He's caught the whole thunderstorm. That's basically what it boils down to. Yeah. Honestly, for Skinner, couldn't be happier for the guy. He's played second fiddle for so long. What I find really interesting is the fact that he either wins by a shutout or next to nothing, or gets blown out. One of the two. And when you have the record he does, and 3 of your wins come by way of shutout, that's mystifying to me how he's so bad in the other games.
Absolutely. Okay, Aaron. Well, let's let that be the last word. Thank you for today. And Friday might be a problem. We might have to do it a different day. I'm going to the baseball game on Friday.
Well, you're going to the baseball game on Friday. I'm going to the baseball game on Saturday.
Okay, we'll exchange notes.
Okay, we can certainly do that. I don't know if Sunday would be a possibility or if that would be a recovery day, but
we'll talk.
All right.
All right, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Don't forget Candid Frank Stanishi on YouTube. That's Candid Frank Stanishi 1030. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.